Hello everyone, bonjour et bienvenue à notre session d'aujourd'hui. Welcome to our monthly Lunch and Learn webinars where DNA invites technology partners to show various solutions from the Sage 300 ecosystem. We try to vary the types of third-party solution out there that we highlight on a monthly basis, but let me remind you that you're welcome to send in some suggestions for future webinar topics. Tell us what's of interest to you. Si une technologie en particulier est d'intérêt pour votre entreprise, je vous invite à nous envoyer un message afin d'être considéré pour une prochaine session. Today's session was requested by a number of our clients and is all about better managing the budgeting, planning, and forecasting processes within the enterprise. Whether your organization goes through an annual, week-long or longer extensive exercise, or whether you're more into the quarterly departmental budget with monthly adjustments, I believe you'll find this session informative and of interest. Feel free to comment and send us questions during the webinar by using the chat utility. You will notice that we muted everyone as we're recording this session and we'll make it available later on. TrueSky is a leader in the market with a solution that is gaining rapid traction in the Sage 300 space. Already deployed across multiple platforms, what we refer to as TrueSky's CPM or Corporate Performance Management Solution is used to effectively manage the performance of an organization's success. In this session, we welcome the president of TrueSky, who'll give us a short overview of some of the ways small and large enterprises are using TrueSky to be more productive, shorten the budgeting process, and involve the key players in a simpler approach. Following this short 30 minutes or so overview, including a demo, we're happy to introduce the Director of Finance for the National Judicial Institute, Nancy Lawless, who will give us an insight into the implementation of the TrueSky solution. We've asked Nancy to basically tell us what influenced her choice to go with TrueSky, the steps they have gone through so far in implementing, and any tips she would share with those considering a solution such as TrueSky. At the end, rest assured, we've put aside about 10 minutes to answer any questions you may have for our panelists. We invite you to submit any questions during the sessions, again, using the chat facility, and we'll try to respond to each question at that time. Pour ceux qui sont plus confortables à soumettre vos questions en français, n'hésitez pas à le faire. Il nous fera plaisir d'y faire suite. Before we begin, I'd like to go through a short 4-question poll just to give us a bit of an idea of who's on the attendance today. And as you'll see, it's multiple options. And the first question is, are you currently working from home? Are you working from home all the time, more than 50% of the time, less than 50%, or back at work full-time for those unfortunate ones? Or maybe they're young kids, maybe it's not that unfortunate. We're getting pretty much the answers. Let me share the answers for you. So 40% are at home all the time, 40% at home more than half of the time. Next question is, when you're budgeting, what are your challenges? Certainly multiple options here. And there we go. Are you creating this? Is the biggest challenge creating the starting spreadsheet that you sent all the managers to complete? Is it the workflow process, the consolidation of the spreadsheets? Is it presenting the final consolidated information? What's the biggest challenge? Again, give it a bit more time. Getting good feedback here. Thank you to all for participating. Here are the answers. So consolidation of all the spreadsheets seems to be certainly the top issue. We'll go on to the next question, which is, how often do you budget in your organization? Is it one of those, let's do the whole enterprise once a year? Is it more at the departmental level? Or is it a different schedule for different areas, or none of the above? We don't have a clue. Quite overwhelming answer. Here are the results. So most people are doing the 1 year let's get together and plow through this exercise. And the last question I had for you, I appreciate your help. Is improving the budgeting process something you're looking at this year, in the short term? Not at this point. Or the week before I retire, as I've seen, as I've seen in 2 instances so far. I love people with a sense of humor. Thank you. And we'll close the vote, and here are the results. So thank you again for that information. Let's, further delays, let's introduce our first presenter, George Brown, who's going to walk us through the presentation and the short overview. I'm going to make him presenter, and there we go. Please take it over, George. All over to you.
Yes. Do you, can you see my screen and hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining this morning. What I'm going to do, just kind of as a high-level agenda, I'm just going to talk a little bit about budgeting, why you need an application, why TrueSky, some of our pillars, what can we do, then a short demo, and then an overview next steps. And then afterwards, we can have some questions. I'm going to be going fairly quickly. You know, I've got about a half an hour, so I'm just going to go through fairly quickly. And then again, if you have any questions, just put them in the chat and we'll try and answer them later on. So why you need an application? Most people out there are budgeting in Excel. You know, and although Excel is a great tool, you know, it's very flexible. You can model any process. It's got a great presentation layer, and most people know how to use it. It's really not perfect for budgeting. You know, it's not a database. There's a lot of manual steps. There's no workflow. There's no audit trail. You know, you've got to merge all the spreadsheets, like you mentioned. That's a big pain of it. And at the end of it, there's no version control. Here's some interesting stats. 90% of all spreadsheets out there have errors, and you know, some of them sometimes get reported, which can be very embarrassing. Most of the time, they're just very simple, you know, cut and paste, putting in the wrong formula, the wrong minus sign, whatever. And then we start consolidating multiple spreadsheets. You know, this kind of grows exponentially. And what ends up happening is most people spend most of the time troubleshooting spreadsheets as opposed to actually focusing on the budget. So why, you know, we built TrueSky? The reason we built it was to really help clients focus on the strategy and analysis of the budgeting process, as opposed to what we call the drudgery of the whole process, which is, you know, all the manual work and effort that's involved. So with that, we looked at 3 user types. We looked at the contributors, and for them, we want to make it as easy as possible to get in and out of the budgeting process. For the finance team, we wanted to make sure they manage the whole process themselves. They can manage it from beginning to end, and ultimately increase the quality of the numbers. And for the decision makers, we wanted to give them, you know, the best information to make the right business decisions, to ultimately reduce the risk and avoid any surprises. So with that, we had 3 pillars when we built the product. The first one was we actually wanted to leverage in Excel. We wanted to take advantage of all the good stuff in Excel. The fact that people know how to use it, which makes it very easy for us to roll out. You know, there's minimal training, there's minimal pushback, take advantage of all the functionality, flexibility, and so forth. But then we added a whole bunch of enhancements to turn Excel into an enterprise budgeting tool. We wanted to empower the finance team. And for that, we wanted to make sure that everything's centralized, everything is controlled. In our world, there's no spreadsheets floating around. Everything's managed by our application. You know, that they would have audit trails. They can control all the security, who sees what. There's no merging. Everything happens real time. There's direct integration into your, you know, your Sage 300 system or any other application that you have out there. Ultimately, you want to make sure you can promote accountability. And then we've got this process called Build Once Design that allows us to create one template and roll it out to multiple people. And depending on their security, the system will automatically generate their input sheets. So for example, if you've got 5 different departments, you can create one template, and the system will automatically create 5 different input sheets depending on each department. So they would only see numbers that relate to themselves. And ultimately, we want to facilitate knowledge. So with that, we wanted to make sure we made it as easy as possible to get more people involved in the budgeting process. You know, the closer they are to the action, the more meaningful and better the numbers are. As well, you can make people more accountable if they're keying in their own budgets. One, to capture not just the numbers, but the reason behind the numbers, and ultimately allow you to drill down and see where the numbers are coming from, increase the accuracy, and provide you with better information to make your best business decisions. So what can TrueSky do? TrueSky can do pretty well anything around budgeting, planning, and forecasting, whether it's financial and operational, compensation, sales and revenue, expenses, capital expenditures, projects, inventory, and really pretty well do any kind of structured data capture that you need. As well, we're also reporting, analytics, and dashboarding engine. So we can create consolidated budgets, presentation quality financial statements, income statements, balance sheets, cash flows, produce all of your budget versus actual reports, headcount reports, as well as dashboards and some key performance indicators or KPIs. Okay. So with that, I'm just going to switch over to the actual demo part and just show you what the software looks like. Can you see my Excel right now, Mike? Okay, I guess I'm assuming you can see, otherwise over here,
yes,
otherwise.
I apologize.
Yeah, so what would happen in our world, you would not send spreadsheets out to the users to do their budget. What would happen is they would open up their Excel and they've got a tab called TrueSky. If I click on TrueSky, I've got what we call our hub. And then we also have languages. We can actually set up the system in multiple languages, English, French, or Spanish right now. So we handle French, and basically that'll tie into the user's security. So they can choose whatever language they want to work in. If I go to my hub, over here we basically start to assign things to people. So in this scenario, I've got some assignments and I've got some reports that were sent to me. So for myself as a user, I've got certain admin tasks that I need to do. I've got my annual budget. I've got some cash flows, some compensation planning, and some sales forecasting, we'll say. Now, all these menus are dynamic. So depending on who the user is, the administrator will send certain assignments to them, as well as certain reports. So for myself, I've got some dashboards and I've got some financial statements. So everything in our system is security-based and everything's dynamic, so people will only see what they're allowed to see. So I'm going to focus here on the office expense. If you look at my office expense, we've got a start date. This is when the budgeting process can begin, and an end date. This is where it ends. So everything gets shut off. Over here, I've got multiple levels, and these levels are really designed for our workflow. And we've got a very sophisticated workflow engine in the background that allows us to send things for approval. And in our world, we're approving the data, not the actual template. So we can send different pieces of template out to different people, kind of have it branch out and then come back in. So when I open my template, the first thing that we do is we provide instructions. You mentioned most of you guys are only budgeting once a year, so people kind of forget. So here we can give you instructions on what they need to do for each particular template. So in this scenario, I'm going to be entering my information in my yellow shaded cells. And I want to keep my increases less than 20% over last year. And then you can put whatever information. So you can, provide, guidance, how to do this and so forth. But here, if I go my office expenses, I actually have my template. And here I got my filters or dimensions. Excuse me. And these are the things I'm actually going to be budgeting on. So for this scenario, I'm going to be budgeting on locations, departments, in US dollars. We handle multiple currencies as well. And then we're going to be budgeting for version 1 of this budget. But again, we can have unlimited number of versions of budgets, forecast, reforecast. So, a lot of you are budgeting just yearly, but really the goal for most companies is to either go down to a quarterly reforecast or even a monthly reforecast, especially, the way things are changing these days. Now, these filters or dimensions are specific to each template and they're all configurable. So depending on what you're budgeting on, you can, configure this and how you want to see it and what the slicers are going to be. If I look at my departments, this will give me a listing of the departments that I have access to. So right now, I've got access to a bunch of departments, but if I only had access to 1 or 2, that's all that would show up. And again, this is all dynamic based on the security. If I look at my locations, I kind of get a different view. Here I get a hierarchical view or a tree view of kind of what's going on. And this is really designed for us to group things and consolidate or highlight certain things for reporting. So for example, right now I'm just doing the Seattle office, but if I want to group my Seattle office with my Seattle warehouse and my research department, I can just click on all those 3 and I can roll those up into Washington. And I can roll up Washington into the States or into Canada or into North America, however we want to do this. And then when we do either our report or a template, we can either have the number consolidated in one column, or we can show them, multiple columns across. So we can show each location in a separate column or each department in a separate column, or each product line in a separate column, kind of depending what you're doing. So now I'm going to go ahead and retrieve my template, and this will actually create my input sheet. And what the system is doing, it's actually going out there and generating it for me based on my security and the accounts that I have access to. So right now I've got access to this department and these GL accounts. And basically what it's done is generated an Excel spreadsheet for me that I'm going to be entering data into. Well, here I got my budgets, my actuals, and my variance. If I want to expand this further out, I can expand it, and I've got my periods. We can have as many periods as we want. We can actually go right down to a daily budget if you need to. If I come across here, right now we said, if you remember in our notes, we said you can enter information in the yellow shaded cells. Anything that's in blue, locked. So they can't touch, they can't break it. They can't add any columns, any rows, change the formulas. It's all controlled by the administrator. All we allow is the users to enter information in the yellow shaded cells. So as an end user, they would just come in here, start keying in numbers in Excel. They've got access to all the Excel functionality. So, like drag and drop, copy and paste. If I want to do an Excel formula, it's just an Excel formula. So you can take that cell, let's say, plus this cell. Okay, I'm going to take that cell plus this cell. Okay. So as an end user, they basically use Excel and enter whatever information they want. They can copy and paste this number from anywhere else or do whatever they need to. Now, the big difference between us and Excel is that we're actually saving this number into our database, and we save this at the lowest level. So for example, the 16,000 is going to be saved in the supplies hardware account for my office expense budget for 2022, for the Seattle office, for the corporate department for the month of December. Now, once that number is in our database, can be used on other templates, can be used for reporting, can be used for calculations, and it gives us a lot of power, because all of a sudden now what we've done is we've taken, the numbers that the users input into our database, and then we can manipulate it and roll it up and do whatever we need to do with that data, which is a big difference between, just using Excel and managing the spreadsheets. We're not managing the spreadsheets, we're actually managing the data. So once you understand the concept, you kind of get a feel for the power of our application. Now, we've added a whole bunch of tools to kind of make budgeting easier. So for example, I've got a bunch of data tools that allow us to manipulate data. A lot of times you'll enter a budget and you'll say, what, my numbers are too high or too low, and I want to change some of these. So what we can do is we can say, what, I want to increase these by percentage and even amount or value. So I can just take the highlighted numbers and just very quickly increase them by 10% or decrease them by 10%. We also give you the ability to do seasonality. For example, if your business has a seasonality where summer is busier than winter, then we can just highlight an account, and rather than entering a number and dividing it by 12, we can say enter a budget for this account. It's going to be 30,000, and it's going to take a summer seasonality, and automatically it'll go and change your numbers for you. So it starts low in the winter and it kind of gets bigger in the summer and then back down, right? So you're just giving you tools to make things very easy. If you want to do it based on last year's actuals, like you like the way last year worked out, you can click on that and it'll give you the same trend as we had last year. Okay. We've also got the ability to attach notes. So we can attach notes, and again, their notes are attached to this piece of data. So anywhere the supplies hardware account shows up, our notes follow. You can have as many notes as you like, and then you can also add attachments to a note. So for example, if I look at this note here, it's got an attachment, and basically it's got a copy of the quote. So we're buying a piece of hardware, and it's, we've attached a copy of the quote. We also have the ability to attach full audit trails. So anytime a number changes, we track who changed it, where they changed it, and so forth. And the reason for this is if you're getting users to enter their own data, they can be very comfortable that the numbers are entered are theirs. If something changes, they can see who did it, when they did it, and find out why. And if they like a particular number better, let's say, I want to kind of go back to this one, I can just click on it and bring it right back. You'll also notice as I'm entering my numbers that I've got this visual cues here. And these visual cues are really designed to help you ensure that the data you enter is accurate or kind of within our guidelines. So what we did in this scenario, we said if our numbers are between 0 and 10% of last year, give us a green. If they're between 10 and 20%, give us a yellow. And if they're over 20%, then give us a red. So as a user's entering their data, they can quickly see, you know, I am within the guidelines. And then as a manager, you know, when they're reviewing this, they basically can just focus on the ones that are kind of, you know, outside the guidelines. Now, if you want, we can actually take this one step further and tie it in with a workflow engine. And we can say, you know, if anything's over 20%, we're going to be very strict about it this year. So don't even allow it for submission for approval, because automatically it's going to get rejected. So, you know, we can define our workflows. We can kind of control our processes. We can say, let it go through, let the manager deal with it, or we can just say, don't bother and let it, you know, stop it from being submitted. We also have the ability to, you know, do kind of roll-ups of line items. For example, if we look at employee training, we track this at the GL level, but as a manager, they're starting to track, you know, what courses are being set up. So if I want to set up a new one, let's say I want to do some training for myself, I can type in, you know, training for George, and I can quickly start entering, you know, the numbers, and they'll roll up. You can see my numbers are changing here. Now, anywhere this employee training account shows up, all this line item detail will happen, and it'll just kind of continue. So everything's controlled in one place. And down the road, when they're comparing their budget versus actuals, they'll be able to quickly see, okay, you know what, maybe this training didn't happen in March, it happened in April. So that's why March is under budget and April's over budget, right? So you can see all that line item detail followed along with this GL account and anywhere that it shows up, whether it's in a report or on a template. Okay. Another nice feature that we have is we actually have the ability to drill down into the ERP or your Sage 300 system. So for example, if I want to see what makes up my actuals for 2021, I can just click on it and I can go to my links, and my links will actually do a query that will go into your Sage 300 system and show you, you know, whatever transactions we selected. So for here, we selected certain GL accounts for the year. Now, once that data is in here, we can decide what columns we want to see. So, you know, we brought in a whole bunch of payable transactions. So we're showing the payable transaction, the vendor names, purchase orders, tax amounts, and so forth. And then once this data is in our table, we can manipulate it. We can say, you know what, I'd like to see this from low to high, or from high to low. Or I want to maybe see, show me my top 10 transactions. And what's the total of those transactions? Okay, so we can quickly manipulate things. I can see, okay, the total for my top 10 transactions was $25,000. Or I can kind of say, you know, show me a different view of this. I want to kind of see this in a different format. Maybe I want to see everything sorted by GL account name and maybe bring in my vendor. Now I've got everything sorted by GL account name. I can see I've got company cars, company meetings, membership fees, and so forth. If I go down to my supply software account, I can see there's 5 vendors here. I want to analyze mobile warehouse, click on that, and it shows me there's 2 GL transactions. One is an office upgrade, which is fine, but there's also a tablet purchase that got posted to the wrong account. So again, you know, as a manager, if you're reviewing your statements, you can actually go drill down into your Sage 300 system, take a look at the transactions that were posted into your account, you know, see if anything got posted to the wrong department or whatever, and really allows you for self-serve when you're actually looking at either building a budget or when you're doing reports. Okay, so with that, I'm just going to kind of flip over and talk a little bit about a reporting engine. And our reporting engine is the same as our template building engine. So once you know how to build a template in our system, you basically know how to build a report, because a report is just a read-only template. So that's one of the nice things about our application. You don't need to learn multiple tools. So over here, I've got an income statement for my Seattle office for my corporate department in US dollars. And basically what it did, it generated an Excel spreadsheet for me. So colors, fonts, look and feel is all configurable by you. Same as a template, you know, you can kind of change the colors, fonts, and all that stuff on the templates. If I look at this statement, I've got things grouped. So I've got things grouped by product line, and then right down to the GL level, and kind of, you know, take advantage of its Excel functionality and kind of hide or expand things. If I look at the top, I've got my projected numbers, my budget, my variance, and my actuals for the prior year. So I can just expand this out. And over here, I've got my actuals for the first 4 months and my budget for the rest of the year. So we can kind of create, rolling forecast. In the month of May, once we close off the month of May, it'll bring in the actuals here, and then it'll continue with the budget for the rest of the year. So, all your rolling forecasts can be fully automated. If I go across, I've got my budgets, my variances, and my actuals for the prior year. Pretty simple statement. If I want to have, department one, department two, department three, we could do that. Product line one, product line two, product line three. Whatever kind of reporting you need, we can do. Now, the other nice thing is, you can drill down into your Sage 300 system from within your reports. You can see the notes and so forth. You can do calculations. You can do some fairly sophisticated calculations. If you want to have ratios and things like that, they can all be done in the reporting engine. Okay. And then one last thing I'll show you. And we also have the ability to do kind of what if scenarios. So we can do, some kind of KPIs. So over here, basically, I've got graphs and charts. And again, one of the nice things about our application is since we're using Excel, we're actually taking advantage of all the Excel objects. So whatever graphs and charts Excel has, that's what we can use, when we're building our reports or our dashboards. So over here, I've got a report or a dashboard for all my locations and all my departments in the US dollars. And the nice thing I can do with this is I can actually start saying, okay, now what would happen if my revenue goes up in, let's say, May by 40%. So very quickly, you can see the impact, on my revenue and my net income. Over here in blue, I've got my forecast. Here, I've got my budget. And over here, I've got my, what if number. Then I can also play around with other things. I can say, okay, well, now my compensation, I'm going to have to hire some people in April, and that's going to go up by 10%. And my expenses are also going to go up, and they're going to go up in May, and they'll go up by 10%. So I can quickly see, okay, what's the impact on all these various components? And I can see, okay, what is the impact on my net income? So you can build these graphs and charts, to kind of provide you with nice visual views, and you can also make them nice and interactive. Okay, so that gives you kind of a very high-level overview of our system. Just look and feel. There's a lot more functionality that we can talk about, and would be more than happy to show you that. So I'm just kind of going to go back.
We're doing great on time, by the way. So got about another 5 minutes.
Yeah, so I'm just going to kind of close up with a few more slides. So just kind of quickly, what can TrueSky do for you? We can do pretty well anything around budgeting, planning, and forecasting. So whether it's financial, compensation, revenue forecasting, expenses, projects, production, and really, because we're using Excel, we can build our own tables and create any kind of data capture that you need. So if you got data in other systems or other applications that need to be brought in, we can do that as well. We can do all the reporting, analytics, and dashboarding. So we can do all your financial statements, consolidated budgets, balance sheets, income statements, cash flows, all your budget versus actual reporting, headcount reporting, as well as any dashboards or KPIs. So really, if you think about it, what we've done is we've taken all the strengths of Excel. So, the fact that, Excel is very flexible, we can build pretty well any process out there. It's got a great calculation engine, so we take advantage of the calculation engine, great presentation layer, and high user adoption, which makes it easy to roll out and train people on this, and added a whole bunch of controls. So we made our system database driven, so everything's in one place. Added workflows for approvals, security, so everything's based on security and everything's dynamic, and people only see what they're allowed to see. Added a whole bunch of audit trails, a whole bunch of productivity tools. We have direct integration into your Sage 300 system, or if you've got other applications, we can integrate that to that as well. And then we have the ability to kind of create, one template and roll it out to multiple people. And depending on the security, the system will automatically generate their input sheets. So really what we've done is we turned Excel into a full-blown enterprise budgeting solution. We have one version of the truth, everything's centralized. You've got actionable items that, basically really allow you to reduce your risk and avoid any surprises. So with that, really what the next steps are, if you have any questions, just put them in the chat box and we'll try and answer them. If you need, more details, you can reach out to DNA, and then we can either have another discussion or another demo for you. And then from there, typically the process is we do a scope review where we'll analyze your current processes, your current, your spreadsheets, and your reporting. And then from there, we can provide you with a proposal. So with that, I'm finished on my section. So I'm just going to go pass this back to Mike. And
Thank you, George.
Then we'll continue.
Awesome overview. I think you beat the record for showing that much of the product in such a short time. Appreciate that. Obviously, the intent was not to show everything at once, but to give you a flavor of what's possible. My apologies, by the way, I've been told that you can see my notes portion of the screen.
If you go to the display settings up at the top, I think that's where you can change it.
I'm sorry?
If you go to the display settings up on the top, I think you can.
I don't have anything that says display settings, so we'll have to learn the next time.
Screen? No?
Not a problem. Well, I'm sure it's okay for now, and I'll learn it for next time. My apologies. So again, the idea was to give you a flavor of what's possible. Some questions are coming into the chat. Feel free to add to that. I did have one question. Maybe I'll throw at you, George, at this point. In your mind, from the installations and the implementations you've done so far, what's a company that generally benefits the most from using such a product? Is it the number of employees, number of people participating in the budget exercise? Any ideas there?
There's a couple of things. The biggest thing is we significantly reduce the administration because there's no, as you mentioned, one of the big pains everybody had was merging the spreadsheets. So that goes away. The other thing is you've got a lot more control. You've got a much more accurate budget. And really, at the end of the day, we're finding that people are spending a lot more time actually analyzing the numbers and using a budget properly, as opposed to just kind of going through the exercise. Like when you're just using Excel or you're not using a tool, you're spending most of your time administering the budget as opposed to actually analyzing it. You just want to get the budget done, and at the end of the day, you're hoping it's okay. With this tool, you get everybody, on the same page. You've got a lot more time to review, analyze, and make sure that the budget is correct and it's actually helpful and useful. As well, we allow you to reforecast more often. So it's not just a once a year exercise. With this tool, you can quickly, either do it quarterly or monthly. So those are really kind of the biggest advantages we see.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thank you again. It's my pleasure now, and Nancy Lawless is going to join us. I'll ask her to unmute herself. Fantastic. Brings me great pleasure to introduce a person that I've gotten to know in the last year, extremely dedicated, who amongst many other challenges she had on her plate, took on the project to evaluate, select, and implement a budgeting, planning, forecasting solution for NJI. The project started when NJI approached us, DNA, to find them a solution to simplify the budgeting process. After a few sessions where we introduced a couple of different third-party solutions, the decision was made that brought us to where we are here today. So Nancy, thank you for joining us and sharing your experience. Feel free to go ahead.
Thanks, Michelle. Hello, everyone. I'm happy to discuss my experience with the implementation process for TrueSky. We are not yet fully implemented, but I believe my experience to date could assist as you are deciding about potential budgeting and forecasting software. Prior to the pandemic, we had made the commitment, like many, to modernize our financial systems and arm our directors with the tools to effectively manage their budgets. Prior to this decision, all budget updates were completed manually, which of course came up in the survey as a big issue. And it was all done by the finance department, of course, using Excel. We were looking for the directors to have real-time financial data at their fingertips, so they were not always relying on the finance department to advise where their budget versus actuals were at a given point in time, and also to address forecasting. It was something we hadn't necessarily done in a full scope previously, and it was something we wanted to start doing moving forward, and it just made sense to implement a tool to handle that process for us. We will be fully implementing the project in the coming weeks, so releasing it to the directors. There have been delays, but of course, to make it clear, it was on our part and was due, mainly to navigating the ever-changing pandemic. TrueSky has been a constant source of support, and whenever I have questions, the response time is extremely efficient, especially considering the delays we have experienced on our end. Every organization will have anomalies in their accounting structure, i.e., we were using roll-up accounts. So we would have a roll-up account that included, 16 of our Sage accounts built into that. And the TrueSky staff, was able to create a budget template to accommodate these accounts. So they very much work with you in incorporating any of the things that might be different in your system. I know we always find it difficult as a not-for-profit to find software that's not geared towards, sales profit organizations. So this has been a great experience working with TrueSky and having solutions to, the differences in our budgeting process. And as always, DNA has been there to assist us, Michelle with follow-ups and support, and Mel to assist with changes we required to our current systems in order to support TrueSky. As Michelle can attest, I did significant research prior to bringing forward the viable options to our CEO. The way I described TrueSky when I met with our CEO, it was the Cadillac of our choices. The ease it takes to access and update the information is user-friendly. For those that are not accustomed to budgets and just starting to become financially literate, certainly not all our directors were used to being accountable overall for their budgets, and it was something we were implementing. So having a software that would give them ease as they learned the process was a huge benefit. And this will be a win, as it is always difficult, as I just said, to introduce new software, and even more so when the software is not conducive to a user who's learning all aspects of budget management. We were also looking for a software that would allow us to implement security measures to ensure confidentiality. As you saw in George's presentation, you are able to set the security. So I can set my security for each director based on the budgets they're accountable for and prevent them from viewing other directors' budgets as well as organizational budgets, keeping salary information confidential, which is not something you necessarily want to be global knowledge across the organization. In addition, the option of the dashboards and other tools was a huge draw for us. It's something to make it much easier. The directors can go in, they have their dashboard, they have their graphs, they can see where they stand. If they're in a meeting, it's very easy for them to pull it up rather than having to reach out to the finance department and ask for updates, ask where they stand with their budget, do they have the funding available to move a project forward. So just that ease for them essentially in, managing their budgets moving forward. I would say my only warning to other organizations would be to ensure TrueSky can accommodate your current general ledger account structure. RGL was probably a little outdated, I will be honest, but it did follow Sage formatting. So the description was for the entire account. So as an example, our salary account would be, an 12-digit code. And so the code would be 5020-0100-2000. 5020 was the account to signify that it was a salary account. The middle digits were the employee, and the last four were the director that was responsible or accountable for that employee. TrueSky reads by component, so that we had to go into Sage and change our accounts so that all of 5020 accounts were listed as salary, and then go into the segment codes and under department put every employee name beside their department code. It complicated things with our reporting then in Sage. So when you started running your transaction listings, it did start to just show salary. So when you were running reports within Sage, you didn't actually know which employee. But of course, DNA stepped in to help us modify those reports so that it would actually pull the information we needed and adjust those transaction listing reports, trial balances, etc., so that we could see the details we might need. So I hope this has been helpful. It's kind of a high level approach to what we've experienced so far. I can say I have not regretted my decision at all. I think TrueSky, out of the three options that we, kind of horned in on, was the best option for us and continues to be so. And I think the ways we can use it moving forward are so vast that, I think it'll be years before we are truly using all the benefits that it can, give to our organization and our budgeting and management software process. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you, Nancy. You answered one of my questions. I was curious to say if you would comment that we probably haven't even seen the entire product yet.
No, exactly. I think there's so many things that this software can do for you. And, I've decided to take a phased approach. Might not be everybody's approach, but I just thought it was easier. Let's start phase one. We're cutting out the manual process. So now the directors can go in, they can see their budget for the year, they can see their forecast, they can see their actuals, they can see their variances. So that's our phase one approach. And then phase two will be my taking the training so that I can begin to build templates, we'll build dashboards. So I think it was just easier for us to do a phased approach with everything going on with COVID. I know it's been cumbersome for everybody and it keeps changing by the minute. So that was kind of our approach to the whole process.
Makes sense. What was training like? Did you take courses individually, or how did it go?
So I still have to train the directors. I have done the training session with TrueSky. It went very well. I will admit that there were blocks of time in between due to my own schedule where I had stepped away and maybe needed to reach out again just for a reminder on how to do something. They're very accommodating, happy to jump in and walk you through the process again. So far, it's been great. I will be training the first director within the next couple of weeks. And I really don't foresee an issue. I think if it's outlined properly in the instructions, et cetera, it should be easy for them to follow. They've been doing it in Excel anyways. So this is just kind of automating the process more.
Okay, understand. In the end, assuming that you get through the different phases that you described, what's the biggest win for you guys personally at NJI? Is it simplifying the process, shortening the cycle? Like, what's the measure of, hey, this was a good thing to do?
I think it's shortening the cycle. I think it was very interesting to hear the comment because I'm sure that we've all experienced that over the years where your spreadsheets, no matter how many cross checks you put into them, there can always be that one little niggling detail you missed and there's a minor or major error. And I think this was our way to avoid that moving forward as well. Cut down on the manual process that is extremely time consuming. I mean, it can take me up to 2 to 3 days to, send the spreadsheets out, meet with the directors, get their forecast, then tie it all back into the main budget. So it just streamlines that process and allows me to focus on other areas where my attention is needed.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your insights and sharing the experience so far. We much appreciate that.
You're most welcome.
And anything you need, scream, we'll be there.
Sounds good.
We're going to move on to some questions. And I do have some in fact, I have one for Nancy. How many people were involved using TrueSky? I think the question alludes to, for the size of the organization, how many people are going to be using, how many people are submitting reports or maybe approving those reports or consolidating?
So there are, at this current juncture, 8 directors who will be using the software and 3 managerial staff that have some sort of budget accountability. So with our organization, it's very much limited to accountability. Those seeing budgets and managing budgets are the ones that are accountable for them, and otherwise it's essentially confidential for the rest of the organization.
Okay, I appreciate that. George, question, is TrueSky installed on premise besides Sage or hosted, or is there a choice?
Actually, we provide a choice. So depending on what the clients want, we can have what we call TrueSky in the cloud, which is basically in the TrueSky cloud. So we can have it completely in the cloud. You can have it on premise if that's one of the options, or you can have it on a private cloud. So we don't really care, where, your deployment option, it's always up to you. And the product is the same in all 3 different environments.
Okay. There's been reference to various types of users. Can you comment on that?
Yes, we've got 3 user types in our pricing. Basically, we have what we call a full-blown user, which is anybody that's inputting budgets and has full access to the whole system. Then we've got the next level down will be a managerial user that basically just approves budgets and gets reporting. And then we've got the lowest level, which is a reporting only user. All they can do is just see reports. So they can run their own reports and drill down and do all that information and basically self-serve on the reporting side. So those are the three user types.
Okay, so you alluded that the licensing is based on the type of user and the number of users, I assume?
Correct.
Okay. Question that may be a little hard to answer, but is there such a thing as a typical implementation time frame? Are we looking at companies should target to put X number of weeks or X number of months aside to basically go through a typical implementation?
Again, there's no thing is typical, but just to give you a reference, most implementations, like for a fairly straightforward implementation, typically we're running comfortably around 6 weeks to 3 months. So that's kind of comfortable, and it can be done much quicker. But typically the challenge is people have their normal jobs to do, and you don't want to push this through too fast. So just a comfortable pace we usually find is between 6 weeks to 3 months. But as I mentioned, it can be done much quicker, and then depending on the complexity, we've got some very large implementations that'll go longer than that. But just on the average, probably 6 weeks to 3 months is probably a fair number.
Okay, super. I'd like to mention, by the way, for those that are our clients listening in, we did not have the resources nor the experience to work on the NJI project. However, one we did recently in the last couple of months, one of our senior consultants got involved and went through the entire training and all that. So DNA is now going to be able to contribute significantly to future TrueSky projects, and that we're very happy. But the support we get in the background from TrueSky has been amazing, as Nancy mentioned, and for us too as a partner reseller. So that is certainly not an issue. The support is there available for everybody. That was the last of the questions. I don't know if anybody wants to add anything at this point. I'm always happy to end the meeting earlier anyway. Nobody has ever complained about that. So we thank everybody for your time. We hope you found this webinar informative, and feel free to email us any questions, any comments. And by the way, I'm letting you know that the next event is going to be on February 24th about managing cash flow in your business. And there's a typo there, in your business. And again, thank you. You can reach myself or Will by sending an email to sales@da.ca or dialing any of the numbers there, the toll-free or the direct number. Thank you to TrueSky. Thank you to Nancy. Have a great rest of the day, and we'll see you on the next webinar.
Thank you, Michelle.
Goodbye.
Thank you.